and just 33 seconds, towards $8 million in questionable legal fees. Pam Bondi didn't expect the committee's counterattack. She fumbled her prepared defense. Cameras captured every nervous glance. The hearing room erupted in whispers. What did Bondi attempt to defend that only revealed her own compromising position? At exactly 2:47 p.m. on March 15, 2024, the mahogany doors of Committee Room 254 swung open with unusual force. Fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the chamber as C-SPAN cameras adjusted their focus. Pam Bondi walked in like she already owned the narrative, but her leather briefcase seemed heavier than usual. Her navy blazer was pressed to perfection, yet something about her posture suggested the confidence was manufactured. Across the room, Congressman Peter Welch sat like a predator who had already spotted his prey. His weathered hands rested calmly on a manila folder marked "Confidential" in red letters. The Vermont Democrat's expression remained neutral, almost bored, as if he knew something the former Florida Attorney General didn't. His flag pin caught the light as he leaned back in his chair, watching Bondi arrange her papers with slightly trembling fingers. The committee chamber buzzed with anticipation. Reporters filled the gallery, smartphones ready to capture whatever political theater was about to unfold. CNN's cameras positioned themselves for the perfect angle, while Fox News adjusted their lighting to ensure flattering coverage of the Republican witness. MSNBC's correspondent whispered last-minute updates into her earpiece, sensing that this hearing would generate significant content. Bondi's opening statement began with practiced confidence. "Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I appear before you today to defend the legal strategies employed during the 2020 election challenges. Every action taken was within the bounds of established legal precedent." Her voice carried the authority of someone who had prosecuted countless cases, yet there was an underlying tension that suggested she knew this testimony carried higher stakes than any courtroom appearance. The former Attorney General's prepared remarks painted a picture of constitutional advocacy and legitimate legal challenges. She cited case law, referenced historical precedents, and emphasized the importance of election integrity. Her words flowed smoothly, each phrase carefully crafted to sound both patriotic and legally sound. The Republican committee members nodded approvingly, some taking notes to support their eventual questioning. But Congressman Welch remained motionless, his eyes never leaving Bondi's face. He seemed to be waiting for something specific, like a chess player who had already calculated the next 5 moves. His manila folder remained unopened, though his fingers occasionally drummed against its surface with calculated patience. 28 minutes into Bondi's testimony, she reached the crucial part of her defense. The legal fees in question, totaling approximately $2.8 million, were entirely justified, given the complexity of the constitutional issues at stake. Her voice gained strength as she delivered this line, clearly believing it was her strongest argument. Every dollar spent was documented and approved through proper channels. The committee room fell into a momentary silence. Republican members smiled, satisfied with what appeared to be a solid defense. Democratic staffers shifted in their seats, some checking their phones for real-time social media reactions. The C-SPAN cameras continued their steady recording, capturing what everyone assumed was routine political testimony. Then Congressman Welch slowly opened his manila folder. The sound of paper rustling seemed amplified in the chamber's acoustics. He withdrew a single document, holding it at arm's length, as if examining it for the first time. His movements were deliberate, almost theatrical, designed to draw maximum attention to whatever he was about to reveal. "Miss Bondi," Welch began, his Vermont accent carrying a deceptive gentleness, "I appreciate your detailed explanation of the legal fee structure. However, I have here a memorandum that seems to contradict several elements of your testimony." He paused, allowing the tension to build as cameras zoomed in on both his face and Bondi's increasingly nervous expression. The document in Welch's hands bore official letterhead and multiple signatures. Even from the gallery, reporters could see it was substantial, running several pages with highlighted sections and handwritten notes in the margins. Bondi's eyes fixed on the memorandum with the intensity of someone trying to identify a potential threat from a distance. This internal memo, dated November 18, 2020, and bearing your Atrontic signature, outlines a very different fee structure than what you've described today. Welch's voice remained calm, but there was an edge that suggested he was about to deliver a devastating blow. Would you like me to read the relevant sections aloud, or would you prefer to revise your testimony? The color drained from Bondi's face as recognition dawned. Her confident posture crumbled as she realized which specific document Welch possessed. Her hands, which had been gesturing authoritatively moments earlier, now gripped the edge of the witness table. The manufactured confidence evaporated, replaced by genuine panic as she understood the magnitude of her predicament. 33 seconds had passed since Welch opened his folder. In that brief span, the entire dynamic of the hearing shifted from routine political theater to genuine accountability moment. Bondi's carefully constructed defense began unraveling as she struggled to formulate a response that wouldn't further implicate her in contradictory statements. "Congressman Welch," Bondi stammered, her voice noticeably weaker than moments before, "I would need to review the specific document you're referencing to provide an accurate response." Her attempt to buy time was transparent, and the committee members could sense her desperation. The woman who had confidently defended constitutional principles now seemed uncertain about her own written communications. Welch smiled with the satisfaction of someone who had successfully sprung a carefully planned trap. "Of course, Miss Bondi. Let me help refresh your memory." He began reading directly from the memorandum, his voice clear and measured to ensure every word was captured by the recording equipment. Quote, "The proposed fee structure of $2.8 million represents a 340% markup over standard legal consultation rates. This premium is justified not by case complexity, but by the high-profile nature of the client and the political sensitivities involved." End quote. Welch looked up from the document, his expression mixing disappointment with accusation. The hearing room erupted in murmurs as reporters frantically typed updates on their devices. The implications were immediately clear to everyone present. Bondi had just been caught charging premium rates based on politics rather than legal merit. Her earlier testimony about justified fees based on complexity now appeared to be a deliberate misrepresentation. Republican committee members exchanged worried glances, realizing their witness had potentially perjured herself. Democratic staffers smiled with barely concealed satisfaction, knowing this moment would dominate news cycles for days. The C-SPAN cameras captured every reaction, ensuring this confrontation would be replayed endlessly across cable news networks. Bondi's response was a disaster of stammering and contradiction. That memorandum, if authentic, may have been taken out of context or represented preliminary discussions rather than final determinations. Her legal training kicked in as she attempted damage control, but the evidence was too damning and her credibility too compromised for effective defense. Social media exploded with real-time reactions. Twitter users shared video clips of Bondi's stunned expression with hashtags like "Bondi exposed" and 33 seconds to ruin. TikTok creators immediately began producing reaction videos, turning Bondi's moment of humiliation into viral content. Instagram stories filled with screenshots of her panicked face, often accompanied by laughing emojis and political commentary. The remainder of Bondi's testimony became a painful exercise in damage control. Every subsequent question from Democratic committee members referenced the exposed memorandum, forcing her to repeatedly address her contradictory statements. Republican members tried to provide friendly questioning to help her recover, but the damage was irreversible. News networks covered the hearing extensively throughout the evening. CNN replayed the crucial 33-second sequence multiple times, with legal analysts explaining the implications of charging premium political rates while claiming standard legal fees. MSNBC devoted an entire segment to what they called the memo that changed everything, featuring constitutional scholars discussing potential perjury implications. Even Fox News struggled to defend Bondi's performance, with some commentators acknowledging that the memorandum raised serious questions about billing practices and testimony accuracy. The network's evening shows focused more on broader election integrity issues rather than defending Bondi's specific claims, effectively abandoning her to manage the fallout independently. The political consequences extended beyond the hearing room. Democratic fundraising emails immediately incorporated footage of Bondi's exposed contradiction, using it to argue for stronger oversight of political legal spending. Republican strategists privately worried about the damage to their election integrity narrative, knowing that contradictory testimony undermined their credibility on voting issues. Congressional Republicans distanced themselves from Bondi's statements, while still supporting broader election security measures. Several issued statements emphasizing the importance of accurate testimony while avoiding direct criticism of the former Attorney General. The delicate balance reflected their need to maintain election integrity messaging without endorsing contradictory billing practices. Welch's strategic revelation demonstrated the power of thorough preparation and patience. His 33-second exposure of the memorandum became a masterclass in congressional oversight, showing how documented evidence could instantly dismantle carefully constructed political narratives. The Vermont congressman's methodical approach turned routine testimony into a defining accountability moment. The exposed memorandum raised broader questions about political legal spending and billing transparency. Ethics experts called for stricter oversight of political legal fees, arguing that Bondi's case demonstrated the need for standardized billing practices and enhanced disclosure requirements. The incident became a catalyst for discussions about reforming political legal expenditure regulations. Bondi's reputation suffered lasting damage from the 33-second exposure. Her credibility as a legal analyst and political commentator was permanently compromised by the contradictory testimony and exposed billing practices. Media appearances became rare as networks questioned her reliability as a source for legal commentary. The incident highlighted the importance of document retention and internal communication consistency in political operations. Bondi's downfall resulted from her own written communications, demonstrating how internal memos and electronic signatures could become devastating evidence in congressional oversight situations. Months later, ethics investigations continued examining the billing practices revealed in Welch's memorandum. The 33-7 moment that exposed Bondi's contradictions became a case study in congressional oversight, effectiveness, and the consequences of inconsistent testimony under oath. The financial implications of Bondi's exposed billing practices extended far beyond her personal reputation. Campaign finance watchdog groups filed formal complaints with the Federal Election Commission, arguing that the inflated legal fees constituted improper use of political donations. The $2.8 million in questioned expenses triggered automatic audits of related political expenditures, creating a cascade of financial scrutiny that affected multiple political organizations. Legal ethics boards in Florida and Washington, D.C. opened parallel investigations into Bondi's professional conduct. The contradiction between her sworn testimony and her own written memorandum raised serious questions about potential perjury and professional misconduct. Bar Association officials indicated that lawyers have an absolute duty to provide accurate testimony under oath, regardless of political pressures or client expectations. The exposed memorandum also revealed troubling details about the decision-making process behind the inflated legal fees. Internal communications showed that Bondi had personally approved the 340% markup while knowing it exceeded standard rates for similar legal work. Her deliberate choice to mischaracterize these fees during testimony suggested intentional deception rather than simple oversight or confusion. Republican donors who had funded the legal challenges expressed outrage upon learning their contributions had been used for premium political rates rather than standard legal services. Several major donors demanded detailed accounting of how their money had been spent, threatening to withdraw future support unless billing practices were reformed and standardized across all political legal operations. The scandal's impact rippled through conservative legal circles where Bondi had maintained significant influence and respect. Law firms that had previously sought her endorsement or partnership reconsidered their associations, recognizing that her compromised credibility could damage their own reputations. The former Attorney General found herself increasingly isolated from the legal establishment that had once embraced her political prominence. Television producers who had regularly featured Bondi as a legal commentator quietly removed her from their rotation of expert guests. Network executives explained that viewers needed to trust legal analysts' credibility and accuracy, qualities that Bondi's congressional testimony had seriously undermined. Her media career, which had flourished after leaving the Attorney General's office, effectively ended within weeks of Welch's devastating revelation. What happens when confidence meets documentation? How quickly can carefully constructed defenses crumble when confronted with written evidence? Bondi's experience demonstrated that political narratives, however well-crafted, cannot survive authentic documentary evidence that contradicts public statements. If this story of political accountability and documentary evidence entertained or taught you something about congressional oversight, like, share, and subscribe for more political analysis. What's the most dramatic congressional moment you've witnessed? Share your thoughts in the comments below. This dramatized story is inspired by real events and public figures. All dialogue and specific incidents are fictionalized for commentary and educational purposes. No defamation intended, only illustration of accountability and the power of documented evidence in political oversight.